All right, this is now the second, the lower part of it, with the 2 hoops done on it. And yeah, even though it went over in some places, it didn't matter because again I'm going to be cutting out around this, so that's it looks like it'll work. Okay, so this is the whole piece. And now I will have to chalk my lines, and I'll have to put the glue on the back where I'm going to be cutting it out, and then cut it out. So that's the next thing, putting down the glue, chalking the lines, cutting it out. And I have to do that with both sections. And then we get to the next problem, which is going to be connecting the pieces and putting down the trim, because this trim is going to be a little bit different because we have the old trim. We have the old trim from here that we have to use to match. And again, some of that is a little bit narrower, so that will be, but once we get over that hurdle, and that's probably the easiest of all the hurdles we've gotten over so far, that then from there on in it's simply back to making a vestment as normal. Everything else will be just the way I usually make a vestment. I've put glue around just the edges where I'm going to be cutting. I didn't put glue in any of the middle. And then on this side I marked the lines where I will be cutting. I'll actually be cutting. I'll actually sew further inside that and then cut off the extra fabric. That's the very edge of the trim. So I'll be actually going about at least 1/4 of an inch inside that. I did the same with the other one. Now while these are drying, I'm going to do the piece for these pieces for the ends of the trim. They have to be done. There's 8 of them. 4 for the front piece and 4 for the missing pieces. There's 2 here and the 2 down here on this end. So I need 8 of them. Now those I'm going to be doing on felt so that I can cut them out, and if there's any edge around it, it'll be the felt edge, and that's probably where I will sew them down to the other fabric. So I know I only need 1 piece of this felt, but I'm going to put it inside the middle of the hoop, and I'll baste it down. I'll put basting stitches to hold it in place. Pretty sure that there's room to move it around so that I can get it exactly where I want it inside here. So this felt is not as big as the hoop. Let me turn this over. Where I pulled the tab up, there's a little fuzz, and I don't want that. I don't want it in my finished piece anyway. So here's the edge. Here's the edge here. We pull you up a little bit this way. Now this is just more or less floating on top. It's caught a little bit on this side. It's caught a little bit here. It's not caught at this end. But then again, I'm going to be putting a basting stitch around it. And that'll hold everything together until it's sewn. And then I will also be using the puffy foam, the craft foam on top of this because those pieces are raised. The felt will raise it a little bit and the foam will raise it even more. Okay, so I've cut the two sections out after I put some glue on the back, cut them out. I put them in place to see that they fit properly, and they look all right. This one does anyway. And the other one will go here. Now I was looking at it to see about the trim. I have these two old pieces of trim that I took off. This one is more than enough to do this section here, but also if I put this in place where it's supposed to go, okay, so it'll line up like that. If I don't know if you're in the looks good. Okay, just check, make sure this is straight again. Should go a little bit this way, I think. Yeah, that's straighter. All right. So adjust this. All right, so the trim that I have for the edges here, get these tools out of the way. I have these two pieces. This is enough to do one side of this. But again, this trim is slightly smaller. I don't see that it's going to be noticeable when you put that under there. What I do have to be careful of is that this trim is not as wide as the trim this trim when I make it. So I mean so when I go to cut off fabric from underneath it, I can only cut a very small amount, maybe 1/8 of an inch. I have to cut something so this trim will lay on both this fabric and the under fabric. But I think this will go here fine without being too noticeable. And it actually looks as if it wants to go. The design should go over a little bit more. You see how this lines up? Yeah, that looks like it should actually go there. So if that's the case, then this trim will be here. And yeah, that falls in this area better than it did. So I'll have to mark a line here where I'm going to where I want to cut it. And on the other side as well. And I'll have to put this under the edge so that these meet properly before I sew this piece to this piece, so that this will be caught in the, I don't have to attach this end of it yet, but I have to attach at least this end of it so that it gets caught in the, when I sew this across here. Which I won't be sewing on the top, I'll be sewing on the other side, but even still, I want to catch it, this trim in it, and the same with the trim on the other side. This is doubled under, so that's the way that it was, but I'll also want to lay this flat, not doubled, it doesn't need to, this doesn't need to be doubled under. It can lay flat so you don't have so many layers. But the other one does need to be doubled under so that this lays like that. And then when I have these two sewn together, I can put it down on the good fabric, sew those lines, and then put the trim down over top of it and put the end pieces on. I'll do the same here. I will be putting the trim right underneath the edges, and this is only about 1 inch. I could use a small piece here, but what I'll probably do is use this on one side here and still get the 2 inches pieces for here, and I'll have a longer piece for here, and then I will have this, if I need it, around the neck area or wherever. I'm not sure, but around the whole edge I will be using the new trim, I hope. All right, so that's the next step as far as this piece is concerned. In the meantime, I need to take out, I've sewn these, and I actually at one point went back into the computer and made some changes, because this one here, this one was the first one sewn, and I didn't like, it looks kind of ratty in here. I didn't like the stitches were not as straight. So I went back into the computer and changed it and made it so that all the stitches are straight, and you don't have this, these stitches are so very long here that they're going to easily break, and it looks like a rat's nest. So I'm going to take these off, and as I say, that's the puffy foam makes it easy to just pull it off. I'm going to, in the small spaces between the letters, I may have to go in with tweezers or seam ripper or something to get it started, but I don't think it's going to be a great problem getting all of this out. It doesn't normally matter what craft foam you use, what color, because the foam gets entirely covered, and when you pull it up, it breaks right at the edge of the stitching, so there's really nothing sticking out. However, sometimes you get some edge sticking out, and I may have some on this because of these small areas, though I don't think that's going to be an issue. That's why I took gold this time. You saw it the other time I was using the brown. It just happened to be what I had handy. The brown is close enough to the burgundy to not be noticeable if it does show. But I could have used pink, and it wouldn't have mattered much, because it doesn't come out when it doesn't show. All this foam comes away. Now I will have to get in here with something and at least get it started. Once you get it started, you can just rip it. Maybe some tweezers or something. Tweezers. And when I cut this out, I'm going to cut it out with a small, you can see where I basted and it's over the basting here because as I said, I went into the computer, made some changes, and I moved them a little bit, but I didn't care much because those are just basting threads, and I'm going to be going over top of them anyway. Alright, so when I get all of this, then what I will be going, I can take this out of the hoop. I don't need it. And yeah, that was smart. Most everything I have, scissors, needles, pins, almost everything's magnetized because of that hoop. It's, you know, when you're when something metal is against something that's magnetic, it often becomes magnetized. So all my scissors and pins and everything are pretty much magnetized now. But anyway, for example, this one down here, I'll cut it out, show you what I'm talking about here. So this piece I will cut. I will not cut it exactly at the edge of the gold. I'm going to leave a little bit of that burgundy around the edge. That will give me a space to sew in. I mean, I will be gluing these down probably with Stitch Witchery or with the paste glue. But even still, I don't entirely trust. To me, gluing is just another method of basting. And basting is never meant to be permanent, and neither is gluing. So I will constantly, if I glue anything, I will also sew it. The basting just keeps the glue just keeps everything in the space where you want it. So this is what it's going to actually look like, and I can even go up in here further than this. So this is what it will actually look like, so that it will go over the ends of these pieces right here. And sort of match the other ones. If you can see this one, it's not exactly the same. This is actually has less space in here, and I could have done it that way, but I didn't. Yeah, but it's the same size. And so that's what's going to be going over the end of the trim on this end and holding everything down. And so that's kind of what it'll be like when it's cut out before it gets glued. And so now I will just have to begin to put these together. How I put them together? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to measure this and make sure and cut the edge straight. I will leave the extra fabric there, even though I put this underneath here. I'll leave the extra fabric because I'm going to have to fold this back and then sew here and then trim it in to that sew line. But what I will be doing on the back is, see, there is this piece here, and I will be matching this piece to this piece and sewing across the edge of this so that you won't see anything on this side. Oops, of course you have to have the right side up. You won't see anything on this side because the seam will be, it will be right sides together, but done on this side. So I will be matching the design exactly where it should go, and then flip it over to check, make sure everything's where it should be. And then the easiest way to do this is with stitch witchery. Put a piece of stitch witchery right in here, not where the trim's going to go. I'll go back over that later, but I'll put a piece of stitch witchery right on this edge here. Match this up where it's supposed to be, and hit it with the iron. I think I might as well just go ahead and do that, except my iron's not turned on. But that's easy to remedy. Okay, and some stitch witchery. So let's put these things over here so they don't, they're in with the scraps, they might get thrown away. Okay, so, all right, so working with this edge. So I'm going to match these up where I want them. And I'm going to double check, and again, always checking to make sure it's straight. That's straight right there. So this needs to turn slightly. And I'm just going to put a pin here to hold it for a minute while I check the edges. So looks straight. Looks like it's going where I want it to go. All right, so with that in mind, I'm just going to put a pin on this end because I plan to lift it up here. And I'm not putting stitch witchery under this. I will come back and do that afterwards. I am going to, this trim is really metal and it's very hard to cut because it is metal. Those are actually gold wires in it. All right, so now I'm going to put a piece of stitch witchery here to here. Slide that underneath the edge. Now, I'm going to have to double this over because it's going to stick out, and that's going to get all over my iron. So rather than that, I think I'll go with the 1/4 of an inch one. Steamer seam would work too, but and I'm going to check it again before I hit it with the iron. Not, I mean, I can always, the stitch witchery won't hold it so hard that I can't undo it. But why take the chance? It's only takes a second to check the straightness. All right, this goes here. I think it needs to go a little bit. Yeah, it needs to go a little bit this way. Okay, take all the pins out if you want to move it. It takes, in the designs match, come on. And this is straight. This is straight. The outside edge. Okay, that's okay. And line down the center actually is straight. Double check this again. Yeah. All right, so try the stitch witchery again. Still there. All right. Put a pin here. There's stitch witchery there, or it is there. Didn't get all the places. Slid back a little when I moved it. Okay, let's try this. That's better. Now that's really in place. I left this open, didn't put stitch witchery there because I still need to put the trim, this trim there. And so that will look like that. I need the outside edges to match up better than the inside edges. So I can put a small piece right there now to glue this in place. I'm wrapping it over the end of the stitch witchery. The stitch witchery over the end of the trim, so that it'll get glued underneath it and to the other piece on top. So I'm putting that under here. And then I gotta line it up. got it. I'm gonna hit it again to make sure. Okay. Cast the shadow I don't like. All right, so this is glued. I'm going to leave a pin there just so there's no undue stress on it until I get it sewn. I'm going to sew from the other side. And with this piece, I'll do the same thing. Put some stitch witchery under here, doubled over. Good. And again, I'm going to put a pin just to keep it from stressing out there. And I'll be sewing it, I'll be lifting this edge up and sewing it across. I'll have to take the pins out, but I won't do that until I'm ready to sew it. And then I'll pick it up and sew it across there, so you won't see the seam, it'll look just like this. And I will have to go in here with the tweezers. There's a few, because I undid the edge there, there's a few threads. All right, it's done. Okay, make sure I got them all. Okay, and now I'll do the same with this edge over here, but I have to wait till I finish cutting this trim, because I want to use the other piece of this in this space. I mean, I can, well, let's just cut it a little long. Only need an inch or so. Okay, and turn this. Okay, and this one I do have enough for a whole thing of stitch witchery. And not quite. I want to leave. I don't want to go with the edges. Okay, so line up all the design. Good. How straight are you? Should be going through the center of the IHS. And you are. So this should be good right here. is more fabric right here because of the design being folded under. There's design on both sides of that. But it seems to be stuck. Alright, I'm going to put a pin to so it doesn't stress. Wait a minute, I have to wait till I get this under the edge. I want to cut away a piece of this. I don't like it. I'll be trimming it off down here, but right there is just too close. The other side meets the edge fine, but this was sticking out and I don't. Once I glue it, it's going to be hard to cut it, so I'll cut it now. Alright, I have enough trim for one side. I have to take some off the other one. Okay, so stitch witchery. To fold around that end. And I'm right at the edge, so stitch witchery needs to go right at the edge. If it sticks out, the iron will cut it off. Alright. Right there. Okay, and I will put a pin here to de-stress it. I don't think it needs one on that end, but, and I need to take a piece of this off here. Not that much, I think. And fold this around the end. Stick it under. Pin to hold, and hit it. Okay, so those are both ready to be sewn. And then from that point on, I have to cut out these, but from after I have these sewn together, then it's just a matter of putting it down on the main fabric, sewing everything down, and going back to business as usual. In other words, making the vestment in a normal way. That will so I will be back after it's sewn, and and it's ready to go down on the fabric. Here's the back piece of fabric, and I put the cross down. I've centered it. It's not sewn down yet. It's only attached with stitch witchery here, here, and here. What I did is I folded each section up, put some stitch witchery along the edges, across the middle, and under each of these corners because they're kind of heavy. These are pieces that go up here at the neck, and they'll be put down with stitch witchery too, but after this. Now I haven't sewn down this trim yet. It is attached in the seam, and I think I am going to run some the narrow stitch witchery just here to put it in the proper place so it doesn't move around when I go to sew all of this. So it wants to keep moving around, so I'll just put it where I want it. And then I still have to glue this whole section down. I'm using the stitch witchery, and I will put some pins in it just for stress purposes. Because when you're sewing, you're constantly moving the thing around, flipping it up, folding it over to make it fit under the pressure foot and in the area where you can sew. So it'll need some. The stitch witchery generally holds it very well, but I don't want to take chances. Sometimes moving around that much will cause something to shift. All I'm doing right now is just gluing this stitch witchery gluing this trim with stitch witchery to the edge. And actually, I think I want this one in a little bit more. Doesn't look straight. That's better. And again, this small section up here isn't done, and I'll do that. I don't know if you can see that, this little piece here. The fabric is glued down, but the trim isn't. Now I just have to do this bottom section, and I did put it down just in case you wanted to see how that was done. Okay, so what I'll do is I flip this up, and I'm using the wide stitch witchery for that, and I'm going to start underneath here and run a piece down the center. I'm not putting it underneath these heavy things. If I get everything else glued, that should be fine. And I want to run a piece. I think I'll do that afterwards. So I want a piece across the middle here at the top. And fold this down. Make sure it's still in the center. Then I'm going to run a piece down each side here. Alright, and this side as well. And really that should be enough. It has a piece going down the middle and on each side, so should be more than enough. You don't need pieces going back. So here is the front of the back of the vestment, and over here is the front. I put the small pieces on, and it's sewed down. And I put here at the neck, I sewed down these flowers. So I should turn it the other way on the table so you can see it. But now it's ready for lining, and from this point on, it goes the same as any other vestment.